This is a super exciting day for me. I just recently posted a video about modernizing your Ducati 696 by adding a quick shifter, which is a feature that comes with a lot of the modern bikes and kind of adds a little bit to your riding, on an everyday basis. Just kind of something sweet and something small that you can kind of feel and kind of get connected with the bike. And I think it's exciting. So today, I'm actually gonna do something that I've been thinking about since like the early days of me riding motorcycles about 14, 15 years ago. And that is turning my Ducati 696 into a single-sided swing arm conversion. So if you have been following motorcycling for a long time, you can probably see people turning, street fighters and adding and leveraging, swing arms, single-sided swing arms from other motorcycles and making them like super unique. In this case, it might not be a project, meaning like I'm doing a lot of like custom work. For the most part, the homework is already done for me. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize the parts from chassis that came from the same generation when my Ducati 696 was made. And I'm going to take all of those parts together from multiple different bikes. And I'm going to turn my Ducati 696 into a single-sided swing arm. So you're probably asking, Richard, isn't there a Ducati 797 or a Ducati 11 Monster 1100 for that same generation? How come you didn't buy that? You know what? If I have to answer this for you, then you don't get it. So I'm not going to even address that question. I'm going to move forward with my modification and make my bike a little bit more interesting for me. So if you're interested in this project, follow me. In a little bit, I'm going to tell you exactly all the parts you're going to need in order to make this conversion possible. But as of right now, let's just focus on removing every part that is going to be in the way of me being able to remove the swing arm and start kind of mocking the new part. So I'm going to be removing the wheel, removing the caliper, doing the line, the brake line, and then all the components that are attached to the swing arm. So at this point, I'm supporting the bottom of the engine so that I can, free up the swing arm, and I'm ready so whenever I'm able to separate the swing arm from the engine. For this conversion, you can use the same shock, and the new swing arm is going to have the same pickup point. Since I'm removing the swing arm, I'm not going to be breaking this chain, so I removed the slave cylinder from the clutch, which is also helping me to remove the counter sprocket, which I'm going to be changing for a 525 as well. You see the shock? The shock you can reuse, and the mounting point, it's on the same place, so you have to make sure that you have the bolt for the new swing arm. So what I did, I just held it in place with a few zip ties. And then I'm going to put like tape. That way I know that I can capture all the, the in there. All right, so this is where things are going to get exciting. So now that we got the axle, or not the axle, but the bolt connecting the swing arm to the engine out, we're going to be talking about the parts you're going to need to get your single-sided swing arm. So in my case, this is what I bought. I bought a 796 wheel for a Monster 796 that is single-sided swing arm, of course. And then you're going to need the following. So you're going to need a single-sided swing arm, which in my case I got from a Monster 1100. It's important to know that there's a few differences between the swing arm and the components that are going to be in the 696 versus the 797. For example, the rear sprocket in the actual gearing on a 796, it's 525. And the Monster comes in 520. So you have to make the choice or either going with a 520 chain, chain and sprocket, rear sprocket, and then keep the one you have in the front, but you have to take into consideration that the gearing on the 796 is, I think it's like 4115, and the Ducati Monster 696 is a 1545. So you have to play with that. In my case, I ended up going 14 and 41 in the rear, and I'm going to be turning my 696 into a 525 pitch. Then you have to make sure that your swing arm is gonna have the pinch bolts. It's gonna have of course, the assembly where the wheel is gonna mount to. You're gonna have the rear sprockets knot. You're going to have let me put it this way. You're gonna have your line for the brakes because it's different to the one you have. You can reuse the caliper from the 696, but the caliper mount, you can see there, it's now on the bottom as opposed to the top of the wheel. And then you also have the speed sensor, or the speed sensor here, which is different to the one you have on your bike. And then rear hugger, which I don't have in here. And then, and the final piece that you're going to need is going to be the axle. And very similar to the one you're removing from your bike, this one has the two bolts that are going to be also keeping in place the rear pegs, as well as you have to make sure that you get the washers, and then you get the circlips, or they're going to be keeping the axle, not the axle, but the bolt that's going to connect in the swing arm to the engine in the right place. So now what I'm going to do is, before I start removing the rest of the swing arm on the 696, I'm going to go ahead and clean up this one. I like to probably, let me show you here so you can see it. I like to probably get rid of all these, areas in here that it has some sort of like corrosion, or maybe deposit of like water that have been kind of making contact with the metal, because I want this to go as smooth as possible, so I don't have to walk it and actually damage some of the threads and whatnot. So I like to do that first. So I'm just gonna get it super clean, and then I'm going to be using the same waterless grease that you use for your swing arm in the rear, and that's just gonna help you, to kind of also slide it and then keep it lubricated, so stuff like this doesn't happen. And whenever I have to remove it in the future, it's not gonna be as hard as removing the one I just removed from the Ducati 696, which was kind of hard, I'm guessing, because no one ever took it out, which is something that almost no one does, but you should be doing in order to keep your, rotating assembly and all the other pivot points on your bike in good shape. All right, so now the fun begins, because we're starting seeing the bike turning into a single-sided swing arm. But not gonna lie, even though I did a lot of research, I was really not sure if everything was gonna work out. So I'm starting to align the swing arm to start installing all the different peripherals. So far, so good. Isn't she a beauty? All right, as we discussed, this is going to be the waterless grease I'm going to be using for the shaft, as well as the hole in the engine where the shaft is gonna go through. Point, I'm trying to contain my emotion, because at this point, even though I knew parts were compatible, like I've never seen them working before, and yeah, like you never know what's gonna happen. And isn't she a beauty? All right, so this is gonna be the first time the swing arm is going to be getting some weight from the bike, and at this point I'm ready to put the shock. The shock works out perfectly with the new bolt coming from the 796 swing arm.
Also installing the 14T counter sprocket. Install it the same way you uninstalled the previous one. And now at this point, I'm going to be reusing the caliper from a Ducati 696, but using the brake line that came with the 796 swing arm. All right, so at this point, we're going to be installing the new brake line that came with the swing arm to our existing Slave Master cylinder from the rear brake. So make sure that you align the brake line properly so that whenever you install the rear set pegs, the aligning is facing backwards so that there's no like weird, kinks or putting a lot of pressure in a place where, the line is not expecting that.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be using a 525 pitch change and reusing the rear sprocket that was already with the swing arm. So we're getting ready to install and cut and rivet and press the new chain. Alright, so you have seen me, put chains in bikes before, and if you haven't, you're more than welcome to take a quick look at some of the previous videos that I had on kind of breaking chains and whatnot. So right now I'm just gonna go ahead. I already counted the links that I want for this chain. Take it into consideration that I have a new gearing and I have a smaller counter sprocket in the front, and I also want to compensate for wear in the future, and then that I have to manage. I can manage or stretch the chain a little bit more. So I think I'm in a good place here. I'm just gonna go for 106 or 108 links if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just gonna remove the excess and bring a master clip so I can get it together. Alright, so I wanted to show you a little bit of the bike and just kind of walk you through the stuff you're going to need in order to make this change, as well as the parts you're going to need if that's exactly what you want to do. So let's just get started. I bought a rear sided swing arm from a Ducati 1100 2009 that came with the bolt that goes through, or the shaft that goes through through the engine, holding the rear pegs, and it came with two, nuts at on each side, right side and left side as well. Reused my shock, so the pickup point is the same. So I just used the bolt that came with the swing arm, which the guy actually added, to the list. As I mentioned before, the rear sprocket was included, as long as this quick hop from Duca bike. Very important thing is that the gearing on a 1100 is not the same as the Ducati 696 from OEM, meaning that the gearing is 525 pitch, so I ended up changing to a 525 chain, and then I got a counter sprocket, which is a 14 teeth in the front. When combined with a 41 in the rear, you get only a drop of about 2% torque from OEM, which used to be 1545. But of course, you know, I'm now running a different pitch, which is the 525. So the rear sprocket was used, the front it's new, the chain is new. So I'm combining used and new sprockets and with a new chain. Not that big of a deal, you'll see. I mean, not that big a thing. Very important thing is the speed sensor in here. This one came with the bike. It's already in this actual, you know, kind of bracketing here. So the plug that it's behind here is part of this harness here is the same, but the actual sensor is not. So that's something you have to, you know, be mindful of. Also, this is a caliper from my 696, but the actual caliper mount puts the caliper at the bottom, where the 696 has the caliper on this side, on the right side of the bike, and it has it at the top. The wheel itself, it's a 796 from a 2009. It has a few scratches, which I'm going to be fixing pretty soon. 2009 796, so it's compatible with the 1100, as you can tell, so no issues. The only thing is that this bike used to come with 160 a millimeter tire, and now I'm running a 180 55 17 tire, so it's much bigger if you look at it from the side, as opposed to when you combine it or compare it, I guess, with the 696 160 tire. And then if we look at the bottom, you're going to see, you know, I bought the hugger, the rear hugger, which, you know, you can see there. And then at the bottom, you're gonna see that, you know, I had the actual, you know, brake line as well, combined with the other line that you use for the speed sensor. And then, you know, I just had to connect the brake line to the master cylinder for the rear, which is inside, and then just, you know, kind of do my bleeding the brakes, as of, you know, since you're of course using new components, you're gonna have to bleed the brakes and whatnot. So no issues with the exhaust that actually runs at the top, so no interference with this conversion. And then the bat wings, which are these rear set pegs that are horrible and I hate them, but I mean, I painted them, you know, black, so they kind of hopefully disappear a little bit. They are the same from the 696, so no issues there. And I already showed you the bike, but this is how the bike looks and sits right now. I am honestly super happy with how the bike rides. I thought it was going to be very different, kind of going from a 160 series tire to a 180. I've ridden, you know, many tires. I mean, actually, most of my bikes have always been 180 millimeter rears, 180 55 17s, so no issues there. I don't feel like I lost any nimbleness on the bike. It actually feels super planted, which I guess it makes sense, because the 796, although supposedly has 100 more cc's on the engine, you know, it has the same gearing or similar gearing, as well as similar chassis. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. So don't be scared if you want to do it, thinking that you're going to lose some of the feel on the bike. If you're looking at making something like what I've done here, just feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to, you know, share with you the parts and everything that if you want to compare notes and check to see if it's gonna work or not. I'm not an expert, but I'll be happy to help you kind of do some of the research. So super happy with, you know, what I've done here, and super happy with how the bike looks. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be happy to help, and hopefully you enjoy this, and hopefully this gets you motivated to do it yourself, so you can do it. It's super easy. I'm no mechanic. The bike feels great. Also, I wanted to say thank you to eManuals Online. I'm going to put a screenshot on the screen so you can see how the manual looks like, and they are actually offering a percentage if you use my link when you buy your next manual. These manuals are great because they show you all the diagrams and the exploded views of each of the parts. Like, for example, when I was disassembling this, I wanted to make sure that how many circlips and washers I'm supposed to have, in my bike, and that's the only way I was able to find it, by just having access to the manual and seeing the exploded view of all the parts, which, you know, put my mind at ease, as well as just ensuring that I have all my bolts torqued to spec based on what's on the manual, and especially when you're looking to how to disassemble the engine, how to disassemble certain parts of the bike. So thank you, e-manuals, for your support, and find the manuals on the description and the link in the comment box below. Thank you for watching.